Hey guys, it's Shannon. I'm going to do a haul today, but this one is a little bit different. This is going to be a book haul, and I know I typically do, beauty and fashion and that kind of thing, but I do sometimes like to share other information with you guys, and if you're on my Twitter and that kind of thing, I talk about a lot more subjects kind of there. And I thought, well, you guys might be interested in some of my other passions as well, because my subscribers are all very smart people, so I imagine probably a lot of you are readers, just like I am. And so I'm just going to show you a couple books I picked up yesterday. I went to my local Barnes & Noble. The reason I went there is, besides doing a little bit of work, I had some gift cards from Christmas, because everybody knows that I go there quite a bit. So anyway, the first thing I'm going to show you is, this is actually the first book I picked up, and it's kind of odd. I'll read anything. I don't know about you guys, but I really will read anything, and I choose things randomly. I'll close my eyes and pick things that way. I will read things, like I read medical books and fiction and children's books, and I mean it really doesn't matter. So I just thought you should know that before I go too far, because there may be occasions where you would go, why are you reading that? And I might say, I don't know why I'm reading that, it's just what I randomly picked up and I've never read it before, and so I will be smarter when I'm done than I was when I started. So anyway, this just happens to be the first book that I picked up, and the reason that I chose it was I actually was looking at the new arrivals table, and there was another book there by this author, and that book actually was the second edition of this apparently what is going to be a series. And so this book is in the science fiction fantasy section, and so I was looking at the new book, and it sounded kind of interesting to me, and so I decided to go back and look up the first one and see if it sounded interesting. And oddly enough, the front cover is really not that interesting to me, and actually as I would walk around the store as I was carrying this, I kept kind of looking down at it, and I kept thinking, oh, I'm going to put this one back because it doesn't look very interesting. And then I would read the back cover again, and I thought, it sounds interesting though, but for some reason the cover kept just kind of turning me off, and there were quite a few times when I thought I was going to take it back. So anyway, long story longer as usual. The author is Patrick Rothfuss, and the book is called The Name of the Wind. I'll just read the back to you because I don't know anything about this book or this author, so I'll just read the back to you. And I'm going to tell you that I can't pronounce the name of the character. It's spelled Kvothe. So it says, my name is, fill in the blank. I have stolen princesses back from sleeping borough kings. I burned down the town of Trebon. I have spent the night with Felurian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that others fear to speak of during the day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that make the minstrels weep. You may have heard of me. So begins a tale unequaled in fantasy literature, the story of a hero told in his own voice. It is a tale of sorrow, a tale of survival, a tale of one man's search for meaning in his universe, and how that search and the indomitable will that drove it gave birth to a legend. So that sounds interesting to me, but I will tell you that I did a couple times almost take it back, and then I had to read the back in, and I thought, okay, it sounds interesting again. The next book I picked up was, again, just kind of a random choice. There was a table with a bunch of different books by this author, I believe, or maybe a bunch of different books in the same genre, and so I found the one that was kind of the start of it. So the author is Orson Scott Card. He's the best-selling author of Ender's Game, and this book is called Pathfinder. There's, the Pathfinder series, and it looks like this. And again, I'll just read the back to you. It says, Rig is well trained at keeping secrets. Only his father knows the truth about Rig's strange talent for seeing the paths of people's pasts. But when his father dies, Rig is stunned to learn just how many secrets father had kept from him. Secrets about Rig's own past, his identity, and his destiny. And when Rig discovers that he has the power not only to see the past, but also to change it, his future suddenly becomes anything but certain. Rig's birthright sets him on a path that leaves him caught between two factions, one that wants him crowned and one that wants him dead. He will be forced to question everything he thinks he knows, choose who to trust, and push the limits of his talent, or forfeit control of his destiny. This was actually in the kind of teen section, so just keep that in mind if you're going to read it. Like I said, I'll read anything, and I do read a lot of children's and teens books, along with, a lot of adult books as well. And that's really just because, for the most part, pop culture is usually always based on, teen and children's books for the most part, a good majority of it. So I thought it sounded interesting, and I'm also one of those people that I prefer thick books over thin books. And I prefer paperbacks over hardcovers. They're just more comfortable to me to read. But I do like a book that has some substance to it. So I do oftentimes pick up kind of quick reads, but more often than not, you'll see me, I'm drawn more to something with, a little more substance than some books. I'm not one of those people to go look for a book that I can read in a day. Or I'm not the kind of person who's necessarily looking for a good summer, lay on the beach and get a tan read, that you just read it quickly and you're done. Then I looked in, I had a couple dollars left on my gift cards, so then I looked in the kind of bargain section, and I actually had, in the regular section, I had looked at this author's books because I've looked at his books a million times. It's Christopher Moore, and the one that I picked up is called Bite Me, A Love Story. There are tons of Christopher Moore books out. He has a bunch of them. And the reason that I picked this one is because it happened to be the one that was in the bargain section available. Now, I've looked at his books a lot of times, and I've always really kind of wanted to read them. They're kind of meant to be, they're sort of supposed to be like a funny version of, all of the supernatural kind of books that have been out for a long time. At least that's my impression of how they're supposed to be. The reason I've never bought one before is because they generally are, anywhere from, even the paperbacks are generally like $15 or $16 to $18 just for the paperbacks, and then of course the hardbacks are, $23, $24, $25. And I just have a problem paying that much money for books in general. You usually will always find me looking in the bargain sections, or I'll pick up a book like this. I mean, this one is $8.99. I think these both were. I think this one was $10.99. I will do that a lot of times, but a lot of times I'll wait until they hit the bargain section and then buy them then. I just have a hard time. I can go to the library and get a book for free, so I just don't think it's money best spent. And believe me, I love books, but I don't think it's money well spent to spend, $20 on a book when $20 doesn't even give you, like 4 to 5 gallons of gas these days. So I think it's just $20 better spent on something else in a lot of cases. So anyway, that's why I've never picked up any of his books before, and I just haven't. I have so many books from the library that I just haven't gotten to a point where I could get any of his from the library, because I generally have, my library only allows you to have 50 books out at a time, and I generally have 50 books out from them all the time. So I just haven't gotten to a place in my reading list that I have set up through the library to where I've gotten to any of his books. So anyway, I don't think I'm going to read the inside of this one to you guys. I mean, unless if you really want me to, then put a comment below and I'll do it, in a future video or do an add-on video to this or something, just because this book has been around for a while, and you can look at it online if you really want to, but just keep in mind they're supposed to be kind of a play on all the supernatural books that are out there. He's got a sense of humor, is my understanding. Another thing you should know about me is I'm not a big fan of books that are love stories hidden. Like, it really bothers me that there are 2 teen sections in a Barnes & Noble store. There's like it's called teen fiction fantasy, and then there's teen paranormal love stories is the biggest section. Teen paranormal love stories. I don't like that. I have a major problem with that, actually. And I'm not a fan. Generally, if a story, no matter if it's a historical fiction or if it's what kind of a novel it is, if it's a vampire book, if it's a science fiction book, if it is essentially just a love story hidden in some type of genre book, I'm not going to like it. That's just so boring to me. They're boring, they're predictable. It's kind of like if you just read books out of the mystery section, they all are exactly the same, and they're all predictable. I feel that way about any kind of book that is essentially just a love story being, not being put in the romance section and being called, science fiction fantasy, or being called teen paranormal romance, or whatever the thing is, the section is called. So you won't see me very often picking up books like that. Like I said, this particular one is really just because it was the one available, and I don't think all of his books are that way. So, another side note about me. The last book that I picked up, this one, I kind of hesitate to show you guys, really just because this is not a book I would normally buy, and it is the kind of book that I would normally, if I can choose something else, I would normally pass it up. And it's one of the books by Joel Osteen. This is Become a Better You, 7 Keys to Improving Your Life Every Day. And everybody has, their opinions about this kind of thing. Joel Osteen is very popular, so, if you love him, don't send me hate mail about how I'm supposed to love him too and that kind of thing. I don't have anything against Joel Osteen, personally. My thing, though, is a couple things. Number one, I'm not a huge fan of evangelical, large religious, especially televised kind of groups. My other thing is I'm not, I have my degree, I have 3 majors. My main degree, or my main focus, is psychology, and I've worked in the field for a very long time. I'm not currently, but I have. And I am not a big fan of self-help books, or even magazines. As I read magazines and pay attention to that stuff because I love beauty and fashion, and I don't read them because I do what they say. I read them to see what the industry is going to be telling all of you to do in order to fit in and to kind of keep track of what trends they're going to kind of regurgitate this time, sort of thing. I don't have, I'm not saying don't read magazines, or I'm not saying, I'm just saying that a lot of people sort of read them mindlessly and don't even pick up on the fact that they're the exact same thing year after year after year. Okay. So the problem that I have with, magazines and with self-help books and all this kind of thing is, if you think about when you were young, and people were telling you can be anything that you want, and you did a really great job, even if you did an okay job, or I'm really proud of you, you tried really hard, and people give you that really positive feedback when you're young, and you feel like you can conquer the world. You set goals for yourself, and in most cases reach them, because generally if somebody tells you that you can do something and you believe them, you can and you will. And you know, you're happiest when you're a kid. I think life gets harder and harder and harder as you get to be an adult. And part of the problem is, I think at some point there's this point in life where people stop telling you that you can do anything you want to do, and then they start telling you how you can't do things and you're not good enough, and they start, you know, everything becomes kind of judgmental. And these days, if you're online much, you know that it's kind of a catastrophe. It's almost an epidemic. I would call it an epidemic, actually. And manners have, I mean, I don't even know that word exists for the most part these days. And part of what I think starts to cause that is you start to, you know, you get a little older, you get to be a teenager, you start to read the magazines, you start to think about those things. You know, I mean, you look at a magazine and it says, well, if you're busty, you have to wear these kind of dresses, and if you have wide hips, you have to wear, and then you start going, well, am I busty? Do I have wide hips? You know, am I doing this right? And then it, you know, they have things like how to be better at sex, and how to get the guys to like you, and how to be a nicer person, and how to, you know, yada yada yada. And people really start to wonder if they're doing it right, and they start to think they're doing it wrong, and they start to think, I need to improve on this. And I'm not saying that we don't all have things about ourselves we need to work on, because of course we do. You always want to try to be better and keep that competitive nature and that competitive spirit about yourself. But the problem that I have is with all of the industry and society that starts to tell us that unless we do these things, or unless we focus on it, it must be something wrong with us, that kind of thing. You know, it's that thinking that I have a problem with. And I think a lot of that is driven by self-help books and magazines and, you know, television and all of the things that start to make us think, well, am I doing this wrong? Or I'm not that way, so that must be, you know, I must not be good enough, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a downward spiral, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then before you know it, you're miserable, you don't set goals for yourself anymore, you feel like you'll never find a mate, you feel like you'll never get the promotion at work, you feel like you'll never be successful, you feel like, you know, you're never going to do all the things you wanted to do. And you know, maybe you have dreams that kind of get squashed because people kind of say, oh, you'll never be able to do that, or that's going to be too hard, or it's not worth the risk, or, you know, that kind of stuff. And there's that weird fine line between responsibility and going after your dreams, or going after goals, or setting high standards for yourself, that we might be in a position to walk sometimes. And so anyway, I think you kind of get the idea of what I'm trying to say. A lot of times I feel like this type of stuff, if you're not in a situation where you need it, you know, I mean, if you've had a death in the family and you are really grieving and really suffering and you are downward spiraling into depression, get yourself help and go and find something that helps you pull yourself out of it. But you know, I think in a lot of cases we read this stuff because we feel like we should, or we feel like, or we've been told so many times that we can't possibly be good enough that we feel like we have to. And I don't really think we have to. So I'm not really gonna tell anybody to go out and buy this book. The reason that I picked it up is because if you've ever watched Joel Osteen, which I have watched him, because anytime somebody becomes kind of bigger than life, I want to know I want to know why, and I want to see if people are just kind of mindlessly following them, or if I feel like it's a good influence and that kind of stuff. I just want to know what's happening in our world and what people are being influential, and if I support their agenda or not. You know, that's part of my responsibility as an adult, is to be aware of what's happening in the world. So I have watched Joel Osteen, and you know, if you aren't familiar with him, he basically preaches in a stadium. It's essentially a stadium that was made over to from like an arena into like a sports arena, like a basketball, that kind of thing, into it's a church. They've turned it into kind of a large church. And he preaches, and it's televised, and it's always full. And the church was started by his father. His father was a preacher. He is not a preacher. He did not go to seminary school. He started preaching basically because his father got sick and passed away. And so he used to work behind the scenes in the kind of television production side of things when he was young, and then kind of got thrust into the spotlight because Dad's dying, and if we want to continue the family legacy, then you're going to have to step into that role. So he started preaching, and what you'll find when you watch him is he really doesn't do very much as far as really teaching about the Bible. He will give examples kind of Bible stories kind of as he's talking, but he really doesn't, he's not educating on the Bible and really pulling out chapters of the Bible and that type of thing. So if you're looking for something to watch where you can kind of learn Christianity and learn the Bible and learn the stories and that kind of stuff, he's not for you anyway. What he is really more of an inspirational speaker. He's more about kind of motivational speaking. The thing that I like about him, and the reason that I picked this up, is because he does often come up with these quotes that I really like. And I'm always looking for... I'm on the internet a lot because of my job. I work a normal day like anybody else would online, and then I do other things in the evening, still work related, but I try to make myself available on the internet for customers who have questions and that kind of thing, and to keep up with emails and all that kind of stuff, during the day. And I use a lot of social networking sites to help promote my business. So, because I'm on these websites all the time, I see the cruelty, the meanness, the jealousy, the lack of manners, the lack of respect, the lack of parental guidance. I see all of the negativity that goes on all the time. And I'm one of those people that haters don't bother me because I have a quicker tongue and a quicker wit than any of them, and I will put them in their place. I can stand up for myself if that's what I need to do. But what I prefer to do is I prefer to take that person and kind of steer them in a better direction. I prefer to give them a little inspiration and say, you know what? The amount of time that you took to write that person that nasty message, you could have done this instead and walked away with $4 or $5 in your pocket, because you were doing something positive and making money for it. Or you could have been working towards this goal that I know you have because I've seen you talk about it before. Or you could have put that energy into, whatever. So, I kind of like to try and redirect people and get them to think about how they're using their time so that they can be the best person they can be, and so that they will focus their energies on things that will make their lives better and not get caught up in the, because it's easy to get mad and get on a roll and, tear people down. But the point is, as far as his book goes, that I really, I have found in his speaking and the way that he speaks, and I know that he's got help writing this stuff. I mean, I don't for one second believe that it's all him. But he does come up with these kind of lines sometimes that I think are really useful, would be really useful to a lot of people. And it's not about lecturing them, or it's not about anything like that. It's about giving them something else to think about, or just redirecting them into a more positive way or a more positive approach. And I mean, if I end up loving this book, I would, I would buy more, but I really don't think this is going to be something that you'll see me picking up a lot of his books or anything like that. I think one is enough. But like I said, I do like some of the quotes. I think change the way you speak about yourself and you can change your life. Well, I could easily say to somebody, change the way you speak to other people and you could easily change your life. There's just kind of some things in here that I think that I can use to help push people in a better direction if I need to. So, if you settle for average, or if you think, well, career-wise, I've done as well as my parents did, and then you just think, so that's good enough, you're not going to get any further. You have to say, I've done as well as my parents did, and now I need to push further to the next step. I can still do more. I still have more in me. I can still change the world. I can still make the world a better place. I can still affect other people in a positive way. You have to push beyond your comfort, what's just comfortable, because you can do more than just what's comfortable. What happened in your past is not nearly as important as what is in your future. So, meaning, a lot of people feel like maybe they were really successful at sports in high school or that kind of thing, and they kind of feel like they've already had their heyday, and that life is not ever going to get any better than that. Well, it's not going to if you don't have higher expectations of it. Life can be as good as you push to make it. There's always going to be obstacles, but you need to focus on the future and not, your better days are ahead of you. They're not behind you. You've got plenty of time to pass up those, those previous successes, but you have to decide that you want it. So, that kind of thing. Other people do not determine your potential. I think that's really smart. It doesn't matter how many people tell you you'll never be able to do something. I have 3 majors. I completed college. I completed 3 majors, 3 degrees in 4 years. And the reason that I did it specifically is because somebody told me it couldn't be done. And I said, I think you should hide and watch me do it. And I did it. And yeah, I busted my butt. I took 22 credit hours a semester. I had to get approval to take as many credit hours as I was taking, and I was taking more than the state allows, so I was having to basically smuggle them off to later semesters. Like, I was doing the class when I wasn't supposed to be because I was over the state's allowance of credits, and then the teachers would give me credit for it like a year later when I had a space, that would allow for it, that kind of thing. And I did it because somebody told me I couldn't, and I said, nobody's ever going to tell me I can't do something, and if you tell me I can't, it's almost going to guarantee that I will, just to prove you wrong. So I think that's another good example, that really strikes home with me, because that is what motivated me to do that, just to say, haha, told you I could, and it was actually a guidance counselor who told me that it couldn't be done. So anyway, I don't want to give away information about the book. I have started to read it. I'm not necessarily, like I said, I'm not necessarily encouraging people to go buy this book. I just wanted to tell you that I did pick it up and tell you why I picked it up, and that it has a specific purpose for me, but that it's not a book that I would normally support, and I am not going to encourage you to get it if you don't need it, because I don't think we need more things in our life that make us question whether we're good enough or not. I think that you shouldn't worry about any of that stuff, and just know that you are, unless you really are having some kind of a struggle that you really just need some help with. So that's that. So those are the 4 books that I got. And I'll just show you these are my leftover St. Patrick's Day nails. I'm recording this right after St. Patrick's Day, but these are little stars. They're kind of just coming up as a blur because my camera doesn't focus. But anyway, they matched basically the reverse of the shirt that I wore. The shirt that I wore was this color green, this dark green, and it had little shamrocks on it that were this color green, like this light green, and then the writing was in this color pink. So it's kind of the reverse of what my shirt was. And so I'm recording this the day after, right after St. Patrick's Day, but it could, who knows how long it'll be before I get it edited and up. So if it's really far away from St. Patrick's Day, then just know that I'm not still wearing this weeks after St. Patrick's Day. But I mean, I could if I wanted to. So if it just gives you an idea, maybe for next year, if you're kind of planning, if you're like me, I like to plan things in advance and kind of have ideas in my mind, even if it's really far away. So, okay, well, if you guys have any questions about any of the books, or if you want me to do reviews when I read them, or if you've read them, don't spoil them for me. But you know, if you want to give me your take on whether you liked them or didn't like them, I'd love to hear that. And or if you have any books that you really love that you recommend, then let me know. I think that's it. I hope you guys are having a really good week. And don't forget, my blog and my website and everything are down in the information bar. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. It's free. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean you have to watch videos. It just means that when you go to look in your subscription box, if I have made a video within the last 24 hours, mine will show up there, so you can decide if you want to watch it or not. If you like books, hit the thumbs up button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.